Oh, it's one of those days. It's a chicken mask day.
Hi friends, host Eric here, host Talking with Famous People, and we are now beginning this live stream event about a minute early to allow for a little introductory wherewithals. And as you see, we've got here in attendance in room 2, Yalor, Mighty Yalor. We've got Champagne Poppy of the Chicken People, and we've got Kaizo, the newest fixture. Kaizo's Kaizo's established himself as a fixture around here pretty quick, and
That's a pretty accurate term.
yeah. And this video is going to cover slot mechanics and slot relations. So what I mean by that is, by the way, yeah, Laura, I got you muted because it got some background noise. But I'll unmute you um, if you mute yourself because I don't want to lose what you say. All part of the fun of live streaming, friends. Anyhow, I thought Yaler gave me some background noise until I experienced the true reality of background noise there. Anyhow, the PDF is available for everyone to download. The link is in the description of the video, and the link's here in the chat here. You're also welcome to join us here in room 2 if you are watching this video. And without further ado, I'm going to bring up the document and go over it from the top. So this section of the document is called slot placement, essence, work, reward, and ping frequency, although it doesn't actually cover ping frequency. So that was something I need to change in terms of the title. But that will get covered in another section. So what do I mean by the category of a function? Category of a function in this instance refers to whether it's an action function or an epistemology function or a judging function. So a dominant action function expresses differently than does a dominant judging function. At the same time, a dominant slot must be defined independently of the actual function that fills it, or the whole idea of cognitive functions breaks down. The whole idea of slots behaving differently breaks down. So is it even possible then to understand functions in isolation? Well, the base function and the tool function are distinct components of cognition, but always work as a pair. They supervene upon each other, which means that we can't meaningfully conceive of either existing except as expressed through the tool function. Yet also, we can distinguish between individual functions, because when in the dominant slot, each function has one of only two possible tool functions. Those two options each express differently, and we can derive distinctions between the individual functions accordingly. So one big question that people don't ask often enough, but that's relevant, and you hear people say different things about it, is are there 4 or 8 functions? Are there really just 4 functions, intuition, sensing, thinking, and feeling? Or are there really 8 functions? The answer is 8. There really are 8, but they come in pairs. On the next 2 pages, you'll see 3 tables providing information on slot names and numbers for both MBTI and socionics. The simplest of those tables represents the position of this taxonomy regarding the slots, while the more complicated tables are reference guides to clarify the assorted terms and approaches to cognitive functions that exist in the status quo, including the nicknames and shorthand that people commonly use, as well as MBTI's conscious stack and shadow functions and socionics Model A blocks. So, just for everyone's reference, the TWFE taxonomy of human attention entirely rejects the blocks of Model A. And the TWFE taxonomy mostly affirms the conscious and shadow stack mechanics as per MBTI, BB, and others. Remember, this section of my taxonomy here is specifically about slot mechanics, and that's only one aspect of a complete taxonomy. So, these are what I'm going to be calling each of these slots. I'm going to be mostly using socionics names. I'm going to always be using MBTI numbers. And I'm going to try to give, where I don't use socionics name, a little bit more information about what the slot actually does. So we've got base slot, tool slot, agenda slot, seeking slot, ignoring slot, begrudging slot, polar slot, and insecurity slot. So this basically explains what a function in that slot manifests as. It's either begrudging, like my TE, where I might be good at it, but it's getting in the way of what I'd rather do, in some sense. Okay, here's the intersystem slots table A. MBTI 1 and 2 is the ego block. MBTI 3 and 4 is the super id block. Yeah, I'm not even going to go over the socionics blocks for this stupid. But if you want to reference that, you can get the PDF for free for a temporary time being. Eventually, I'll put it back, take it off sale. It's on sale for free, but if you get it quick, you'll get it for free. This one you can look at on your own if you'd like. I don't want to go through it particularly right now, but it shows you what different information on each of the slots based on TWFP or MBTI or socionics or BB. Okay, so that's that function. But this is the page where I really want to start explaining how the mechanics work. The mechanics of slot relations run on necessitation and exclusion. To have a certain nature necessitates that one ignore certain things and seek certain things. In other words, if you know the base function, you also know the ignoring function and the seeking function. The table below shows how stack mechanics work. To use this table, simply define A1 as N, S, T, or F, then define O as E or I. For example, if I say A1 equals N, then O equals E, and O equals E, then the first slot is NE, and the fifth slot is NI, and the fourth slot equals A2, which is SI for NE. If that's not clear enough, well, you can see this first table here. It shows you that we can understand the slot mechanics as dictated against or compared against the base function. Whatever A1 is, and A1's O is, the opposite O of A1 will be on the flip side, the shadow function. And the fourth slot will be the pair that goes along with A1. So NE's pair mate is SI, TI's pair mate is FE. So if you've got TI in A1, that's T with the O being I, and that means A2 would be FE, so F with the O being E. Okay, and you'll see here that it tells you here that if your A1 is intuition, your A2 is sensing, and your B is thinking or feeling. If your A1 is sensing, your A2 is intuition, and your B is thinking or feeling. If your A1 is thinking, your A2 is feeling, and your B is sensing or intuition. Your A1 is feeling, and your A2 is thinking, and your B is sensing or intuition. O equals the orientation of the dominant function, and not O equals the opposite orientation of the dominant function. So you can see this explains all the mechanics of stacks entirely. You don't need any blocks. You don't need any other nonsense. It's just this. This is the mechanics of it. That's it. So let's look at functions and jurisdictions next. Functions, Fi and Ti, their jurisdiction is to render shit, either experientially, like with Fi, or objectively with Ti. Fe and Te, their jurisdiction is interacting with shit, interacting with data, interacting with objects in the world, interacting with people's emotional states. Si and Ni is the jurisdiction is to know, they're epistemological, and Se and Ne are the jurisdiction is to act, they're action functions. So here's another way to look at the functions and jurisdictions as well, though, because they don't just pair up like this, they also pair up like this. Ne and Si, well, their jurisdiction is timelessness. In other words, the Si person struggles with understanding how systems develop over time and predicting those sort of things. But the Ni person has trouble linking what they know to themselves. So Ne and Si are timelessness, Se and Ni are timefulness, Te and Fi are impacts, and Fe and Ti are warrants, that is to say justifications or reasons. This isn't precise in the sense that these are as blunt divisions as we can make in order and still draw distinctions that are meaningful, because as we get more precise, we become less effective in our frame jumping. Okay, so then here's another way of looking at the jurisdictions. Se and Si, well, that's self as body. Ne and Ni, self as mind. Te and Ti, observer ignoring. Fe and Fi, observer addressing. All right, now if we look at the loci of concerns, complements, and clashes for the judging functions, what does this mean? Well, it's what's it concerned with? Legitimacy that's the domain of Ti, NESI are complementary manners because they engage in timelessness, which is consistent with TI. NI and SE are clashing manners because they engage with timefulness, which TI doesn't deal with very effectively. And you might say that the first concern by the function pair of TI-NE is legitimacy of talking, TI-SE legitimacy of doing. Now, procedure as a locus of concern is the function TE, and its complementary manner is NISE, and its clashing manner is NESI. So TENI is optimality of procedure, and TESI is optimality of self. Politics, work in the room. This is the function FE. The complementary manners are NESI, and the clashing manners are NISE, because FENI is a functional assessment of social rightness, effectiveness, or properness, or something like that. FESI is about social realities. Authenticity, FI is the function. NISE is the complementary manner. NESI is the clashing manner. FINE is authenticity of talking. FISE is authenticity of doing. Since FI itself is experiential, it causes FINE to be to gum up the system a bit. If you're an FINE user, you're feeling the authenticity experientially, and then you're trying to render it into non-authentic, objective, meaning-making processes. So that's why NESI is more complementary to it. Okay, now let's look at the loci of ontologies, complements, and clashes for perceiving functions, and then I will pause and take comments, questions, and concerns. Locus of ontology, knowing me is SI. Complements TIFE, clashes TEFI. SIFE is the social self. SITE is the practical self. Knowing others, NI. TEFI, but this is, oh, I didn't fix this. God damn it. Stupid Eric. Complementary axis will be TEFI, and clashing will be TIFE. And NIFE is knowing the other. NITE is knowing the path. For SE, the complementary axis will be TEFI, and the clashing axis will be TIFE, because SEFI is doing what feels good. SETI is doing what's decided. Okay? And talking, NE, the complementary axis is TIFE, and the clashing axis is TEFI. NEFI is creating resonance. NETI is creating consistency. And now I will pause before doing the next table on slot relations. Do I have anybody who's currently in the room would like to comment, ask questions, anything like that? Okay, and I also see that there are no questions in the comments in the live dashboard. So I will proceed forward then without further pausing. All right, so let's look at the slot relations base and tool functions. If your nature, your dominant function, your base function, is NE or SE, then your way, your tool function, is TI or FI. If your base function is SI or NI, your tool function is TE or FE. If your base function is TE or FE, your tool function is SI or NI, and if your base function is TI or FI, your tool function is NE or SE. In other words, if your nature is to act, then rendering is your way. Rendering means either feeling it directly or determining statuses about it. If your nature is to know, then interacting is your way. In other words, if you know first subjectively what's consistent with your ontology, or objectively what's consistent with the way the world is, then you naturally are going to proceed by interacting accordingly. If your nature is to interact, then the next thing you're going to do, you're going to have to know is your way. So because your nature is FE or TE, that means your next function is going to be an epistemology function. And if your nature is to render, TI or FI, then acting is your way. If your first job is to go, okay, I'm going to TISS or FI experience this, then you act upon that as a second course of action. It has to be this way because if you imagine, like, think about an introvert who doesn't talk much. It's because they have an introverted function first. If they had an introverted function second as well, then they wouldn't be able to function as a human being. They're already very quiet. If they had two introverted functions in a row, they'd be completely mute. They'd just be so locked internally that they wouldn't be able to meaningfully function. One might argue that autistic disorders or autistic spectrum disorders are, in fact, an example of somebody who has a cognitive function stack that goes NI, TI, or NIFI. That would explain a lot about autism. That they're inadequately engaged in the external world. Okay, let's go to this one here. So we just did base and tool. Now let's do a table I did before in another video, tool and blind spot, but I've altered it a little bit. So if your tool function is NE or SE, then your blind spot is also NE or SE. The other one, SE or NE. If your tool function is SI or NI, then your blind spot is NI or SI. If your tool function is TE or FE, then your blind spot is FE or TE. If your tool function is TI or FI, then your blind spot is FI or TI. So in other words, your way of executing your nature determines your blind spot. If your way of executing your nature is X, then the antithesis of X is something you do not know at all. And you can see here, it's more detailed explanation of it. I've gone over this table before in another video, so I'm not going to go over it in great deal here. But note, again, that we can't understand any cognitive function without first and foremost understanding the distinction between objects, subjects, actions, comparisons or evaluations, and and yeah, those things. When we talk about, say, TE or FI being subjective, what I mean by that is it compares in its calculus, it compares the uh, the objects or data flow it's experiencing against personal interest. When I say TI is objective, I mean it compares the objects against other objects. When I say that FE is objective, I mean it compares the data flow against a universal norm. When I say that TE is subjective, I mean it compares the data flow against a particularist norm. When I say that FI is subjective, I say it experiences the data flow as a particularist norm. So these distinctions are critical to understanding how human cognition works. Human cognition is a combination of acting, experiencing, knowing, and evaluating. The fact is, all human beings are endowed first and foremost with NISE. You have to have at least that to be an animal. NI tells you that thing's food. SE goes and gets it. NI tells you jump now or the tiger will maul you. SE jumps. This is the knowledge that's implicit to you in existence, first and foremost, is NI. That is to say, you are born knowing how to suck. And when your mom puts your face to her tit, you will suck it. You don't have to learn that. You're born knowing it. It's introvertedly intuited by you. Now, much introverted intuition is much more sophisticated than that. Just because, oh, here's Hank. You scared me, Hank. Just because we can come up with a simple example like that doesn't mean NI is exclusively simple in that fashion. In fact, NI can make much more complex calculations than can TI. It's just it doesn't do it explicitly or consciously. It allows you to treat ideation like it were a tiger running at you so that you know when to jump. Now I'm going to go put this tortoise in its new home over there that I finished for it yesterday, and I'll be right back to check to see if anybody has any comments or anybody has any chat words on the live stream dashboard. Look who came up to me. Okay. Uh, Anybody have any questions? Let's see here. Hmm? I mean, I didn't see him until he was right here. So I don't know where he came from. Okay, so we'll let's see here. There's a lot of questions here I didn't notice. Do you burn out by trying to access your shadow function in a regular sense? For example, if you are any first slot in TI second slot and you want to turn your inventiveness into something useful while exploring TE, which is the second shot shadow function, you will burn out, make you burn out. Okay, well, the thing is, we actually, exploring TE is our primary growth area. To the extent that we can actively get better at a shadow function, it is TE because it's our sixth function, which means we we countervalue it, but can actually be quite good at it. We don't ignore TE as a TI DOM does. We just find it gets in our way a lot. I've ideated that after I'm done building this gate here, I'm going to do blah, blah, blah. Or I've ideated a process where I say, okay, so first I'm going to attach this part to this part on the gate. And then as far as I'm concerned, that conclusion has been noted out. There's nothing else that needs to be ideated about it. All that's left to do is to execute it. Now, TE is the stage between those two things. TE says, okay, hold on, Eric. Are you sure this is the right place to put the gate? Are you sure this is how you want to affix it to the other thing? Maybe you should use a different kind of screw. Maybe you should blah, blah, blah. Oh, maybe I should do this because I see now if I do it this way, then I'm going to have problems later. That TE process comes between the idea of what you want to have accomplished and actually doing the thing. So good TE means you do shit well and wisely. Bad TE means you do shit poorly or inefficiently. But the problem for HPs is not really the TE, although it will interfere with us periodically as we do something else stupid like, fuck, I put it on backwards. Or yesterday I had this little saw, this Makita, it's like a mini circular saw, and it was perfect for cutting through this chicken wire. It was like rip, cut right through it. And then I went to do it again, and all of a sudden it didn't work anymore. Why doesn't it work? It was because I was doing it backwards. I didn't think to myself that the directionality of the blade matters, but it did matter a lot. And when I did it backwards, it got it all gunked up. So I had to turn it around the right way, and it worked fine again. That's example of TE. If I had stopped and thought before beginning to cut the chicken wire and determined, okay, how exactly is it that this tool is so effective at cutting this, and what possible ways might it be rendered less effective by my own failures? In that instance, what you're talking about is TE that is planning and anticipatory. The thing is, NE doesn't like plans and anticipations because it likes to adjust on the fly. So we countervalue TE because it tends to interfere with the free flow of our ideation, but we're necessarily going to be pretty good at it if we choose to direct our attention to ideating about it. In contrast, we can't really get much stronger with NI. We will naturally, but we can't consciously do it very well because it's ignoring. We have to assume that there is a best way to generate various possibilities, and we have to not attend to the best way to attend to other possible ways. In other words, if I'm focusing on why the way that is the best, I'm not coming up with alternatives. So that's why I can't really improve NI, although it will improve over time in specific noted sections of your life. Like my NI is very bad in some areas and it's very good in some areas, but it's not conscious in any areas. Now, your seventh slot function, you can get better at recognizing when it occurs as a momentary event, but you'll never get good at using it for anything. So I'm good now at recognizing when I'm experiencing introverted feelings, but they're still useless to me. I can't do anything with them. I don't know how one does stuff with them. I don't know what they're for. All right, and then the last one, SE. Um, your eighth function is where your insecurity is. So the problem is like this. Let's say I were to go play a sport. My first instinct about dealing with that sport would be to sit there and go, I wonder what sort of strategy I should involve in this sport. How should I play my game of basketball today? And if I do this, and I could do that, and maybe they do this, and maybe they do that. Of course, it's all completely useless because once you get out on the court, it's not possible to say, oh, I'm going to post up more today and be sure that's a good idea because you don't know what kind of defenders you have there. Maybe they've got somebody who is a big shot blocker, and every time you post up, he just swats your shot. Maybe every time you post up, you get the ball stolen from you because you don't have good ball handling skills. Oh, that plan was a bad plan. I should have done that. We're kicking around with a bunch of fucking words rather than actually attending to what's actually happening in the game and responding accordingly because we're NESI, not SENI. And that makes SE a place of insecurity for us. I know that if I go to compete in an SE thing, that my gut instinct, my default nature, is going to run counter to what SE rewards or SE's manifestation. In other words, if I work on SE, I have to work on following through on that which is already decided, which means I have to stop considering that which I'm considering. But I almost never stop ideating about shit. I just go over it over and over again in my head and it gets a little bit cleaner, a little bit cleaner, a little bit cleaner. So that's why SE will always be an insecurity area for me. I know I'm not good at it because what I am good at is it prevents me from being good at that. I could get better at following through on shit. And that would be for me, though, getting to be better at SE via TE. So I'd say, okay, well, I need to be smarter about where I direct my energy. I need this energy directed here to attain an actual outcome. And so, for example, as my TE's improved, my SE with this channel has gotten better. I made the video, I made the document, I uploaded the PDF to the store, I got everything set up ahead of time, I pre-announced this video, and then I started the stream. Now that's good SE. It's good SE because I'm prioritizing TE conclusions over NE inclinations. And what that means is this is not the most fun thing for me to do in terms of uploading shit to the store and following through on all the put that, put this, put that, put that. But that I get that I'm listening to TE because my TE has gotten better. And therefore my SE manifests more successfully, but it's not because I've actually improved the SE per se. I still hate it. I still hate following through on shit. I got to really narrow the time frame. Okay, so let me go down and read these other things here. Just put yourself constantly in a place where it's better to use that function. Force yourself to use it. Yeah, I'm in IDOM and I practice wilderness living skills. I notice I usually adopt behavior that is beneficial without even thinking about it. Okay, well,
Well, in my case, it's a little bit similar in the sense that I'll have a plan. I'll draw up a plan for an experiment that I'm going to do. But the problem is, as soon as I start following the plan, I meet a problem that was not supposed to be there. So then, in the beginning, I kept trying to still follow the plan, but I realized that it was wasting my time because the experiment wouldn't have worked. So what I've realized is I just let NE flow by not making an exact plan, but just changing anything that needs to be changed and then writing it down. So instead of writing a plan first and acting, I act and write the plan at the same time. So I suppose,
right. Yeah,
yeah,
I do the same thing. But the problem with it is that some things in life are
do need,
naturally aligned
yeah,
to allow you to adjust on the fly, and some things in life are
I'm
just not a
not,
good way to deal with them. That's the problem is that if if you're building a fence, that's not a good way to go because every time you make a
yeah,
mistake, you have to go back and undo it physically. If you're writing a document, that's a good way to go because all you got to do is push Control Z.
of course.
Yeah. So
yeah.
we are
But then,
trial and error types.
but isn't it because, I mean, with all the TI and the NE, you're constantly thinking about the possible outcomes that might interact, but then you don't focus so much on the real problem that you have right in front of you because you're too focused on potentials that will probably never actually occur. So is there a way to filter NE and TI, but not quite go into the SE mode?
Well, I mean, I think that the issue is TI and NE are timeless. In other
Yeah.
words, NE ideates and it can say, okay, let's pretend we all put 12 hours into doing this thing. Okay, now that's done. So we just finished it in 1 second because we didn't actually do it. We're just pretending. We're saying let's set the status of this as done.
Yeah.
And so when we use our TE, what we do is try to use TE in a timeless fashion. But TE is time sensitive. So we'll go like, okay, well, I'm going to build the gate, then I'm going to clean the backyard, blah, 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 blah. But TE doesn't work well like that because it's saying, no, I am to be used to address the task in front of you in its own particularist nature. So before I go, first I'm going to build the gate, then I'm going to clean the backyard, I go, first I'm going to hammer this fence post. Where should I hammer it in? Where should I hammer it in? Because I know that there's a sequence of operations here, that before I do the next thing, I should do this thing first. Whereas NE just nodes it out and goes, okay, well, let's combine all the steps of fence building into one and call it build a fence. And that's why it's counterindicative of TE. We don't like TE because it forces us to node down and deal with the actual node itself rather than treat it like an object for the purpose of parsing.
Interesting. So with the lack of SE or TE in a sense, then be the reason why, for example, when it came to theory and contextualizing subjects, I found very easy. But when it came to learning a new physical instrument, it took a little bit of a learning leap before I could physically learn how to use that machine. But once I understood the machine, it felt more like it does for like theory and context like that.
Right, because to you, your first thought is, okay, I need to learn this machine, and then I will use the machine as follows.
Yeah.
Okay, so in your head now, you've learned the machine, and you're standing in front of using the machine, but you haven't actually learned the machine yet, right? You haven't actually seen the machine yet.
No.
But in your head, you've already worked through. Okay, well, let's pretend things are timeless. Now, once I've learned the machine, blah 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 blah. Of course, things aren't timeless. NE doesn't like that. I could say, okay, well, today I want to clean the backyard, put everything in the garage, blah blah blah. But it takes a certain amount of time, and I only have a certain amount of energy. Now, if you're NE heavy, you're SI seeking because you don't have any conception of how much energy shit takes and how tired you're going to be. And if you're SI dominant, then you're NE seeking because you don't really understand what you can do with your energy, except preserve it and attend it to it. So that's where the timelessness comes in, and the answer to optimizing your SE or your is to consciously attend to TE as follows. Okay, I'm about to begin something here. I'm about to begin some ideation, or I'm about to begin something that's supposed to lead to an actual conclusion. Before I start doing shit, for God's sake, because I know my first step is always to start doing shit without even thinking. But before I start doing stuff, I will stop and I will say, Eric, what possible pitfalls can you imagine if you proceed on your imagined course right now? You've set yourself forward. You're going to start hammering right now. You're about to start swinging that hammer, Eric. You better stop yourself and ask, what will happen if you do it the way you currently have in mind?
Interesting. Yeah. Because I mean, I think the biggest problem for me was actually just utilizing TE and just, for example, I had a simple problem of just buying chemicals. I was thinking too much about all the different potentials each chemical may give me in an experiment I haven't even done yet. And I knew, so imagine this, it was actually the same chemical, just different derivatives of the same chemical, meaning just different purity levels, but I still couldn't choose between one because I was thinking too much about the potentials in each case that I couldn't come up with a simple solution, which I suppose, yeah.
Look, I'm having the same sort of problem getting my fall work situation set up, which is I have a lot of different possible angles to set things up I can think of. Like, how do I want to direct energy to making sure my fall and winter, my school year time is profitable, as profitable as possible? Well, that requires a weird combination of things because there's the NI approach, which says, well, what's the single best way you can accomplish what you're looking for? And then there's more of an NE seed strewing approach where you go, well, why don't I direct a little bit of energy to a lot of these different paths and see which one hits? And then there's the SE problem, which is because I can't really come to a firm conclusion about it because it's too complicated a set of variables and my NI hasn't kicked me yet. I end up dragging my feet and not doing anything because I don't know what the best thing to do is. I don't have the NI clarity of vision about what the best approach to this is, and I don't really like to just follow through on something at all if I'm not pretty confident that the SE is not being wasted.
Yeah, but I mean, I would say like other types who are in NE heavy or TI heavy are actually better at using their weaker functions than us because the way life is designed, we use TI without even knowing it. It just constantly happens. So and it doesn't derive as much energy as, let's say, if we try to force ourselves to just sit down, notice all the details on a page, and then replicate it. But other types, because TI is necessary, and NE is necessary sometimes with coming up with ideas, they're forced more often to use it, while we kind of still use NE still, even when we shouldn't.
Okay, so this is an interesting point. Are there some functions that if you have it as a shadow function, you end up getting better at it than other functions you have as a shadow function because of the fact that life compels you to use them more often?
Yeah.
That's a very interesting question, and I would say that no, it's not the case because even though it seems to us that TI is really necessary, it would seem to an FI tool person that TI is unnecessary and FI is really necessary.
Yeah.
And so it's like whenever we're talking about, well, everybody has to have some sort of access to all of the functions. But I've talked to NE polar people before. Many of them can't come up with any ideas. I've talked to TI polar people before. Many of them can't solve even the simplest conditionality problem. I've talked to FE polar people before. Many of them are socially retarded. It's like the polar is universally the best you can do with it is come to recognize examples of it when they happen to you.
Yeah.
You can't learn to use them really.
Okay, but just for for everyone out there who may not understand the use of a shadow function and the different slot levels on the normal functions. So if someone has, let's say an FE on their fourth slot, that's going to be the FI is going to be their polar function, right?
Now, if they have FE in the fourth, then FI will be the insecurity function.
Yeah.
Because FI would be the eighth. So if you have you have FE fourth, you have TI first, and you have FI eighth. Now, if you have TI first, then you necessarily have an action function second, either NE or SE.
Okay, and so what about in like I suppose let's talk about in an energy sense. Which one will take more energy to use? An FE on the third slot, or let's say NI on the shadow function side?
Well, you won't use any energy with NI at all because it'll pop off periodically, and it'll pop off in ways that you don't recognize it's even popping off. I've used this analogy before. The best way to use NI is to keep your NE so busy that you don't notice how NI is producing shit. For example, if I'm an NE fisherman, what I should do is have multiple lines in and nets and be constantly trying to get fish and find fish here, whatever. And then NI will occasionally just sort of a fish will appear in the boat.
Oh,
Because I'm so busy with my mind thinking about the possibilities that I allow NI to dictate which ones are worth keeping without attending to it consciously.
Okay. But when it comes to TE, for example, for an ENTP, you may have to be more conscious of it because of how it just happens to work.
Right. You won't at first naturally be conscious of it because you naturally ignore when you're like a teenager all of your shadow functions until you metacognate about it some. Once you understand what TE is, then you find yourself reminding yourself, okay, Eric, use your TE. Because and then you will get better at it. But remember that getting better at it means you will spend more time attending to issues of how more effectively to execute a given course of action, which means you will spend that time not ideating about other possible courses of action. And you will spend that time not concerning yourself with how your comfort level is or your feelings are or whatever else. That TI time is a trade-off. You're trading off some other manner of attention in order to spend time in that manner of attention. And you do have to do that with your sixth slot. It's your growth area. The sixth slot function is the one where you're well served to sacrifice a little bit of dominant tool function time in order to attend to the sixth slot function, more so than any of the other shadow functions by far.
Okay. And would it be a recommendation to, I suppose, develop your aspirational function and your insecure function?
Well, your third function, your aspirational or agenda function, is something that again you will develop naturally, but it's wise to draw distinctions within yourself, because what'll happen is our first natural inclination is to, especially if your TI12 is to hate FE, even though it pairs with it, because FE keeps running afoul of the cleanness of the world. Well, that makes perfectly good sense, Eric, but people don't want to do that. Well, why don't they want to do it? It makes perfectly good sense. I hate FE. FE is so fake. FE always cares about what other people think. Blah, 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 blah. That's our first reaction as TI tool or dominant users to FE. Over time, we come to understand that FE runs on the same kind of consistency engine that TI does, and that, in fact, it's okay for us to want attention and to want to be liked. We're typically taught very young that if you are trying to seek attention or that you want to be liked, then you are trying too hard and therefore failing, right?
Yeah.
We have to overcome that lie, reject it, and embrace our own nature. Every type has aspects of their nature that as a general rule, the rest of the types look down upon in some fashion. So, as an SE Dom, you're going to get shit from people like me. As a TI Dom, you're going to get shit from FI users. As an FE Dom, you're going to get shit from FI users and TI users. As a TE Dom, you're going to get shit from FE. It's like whoever it is, whoever you are, you're going to get shit from types who think that pure manifestation of TESI is too bossy and bullshit, and I don't like it, and that's where the evil comes from. And
interesting.
And the one that the people condemn is going to be their eighth function.
So is this why, for example, today I was having a discussion with an INFP about something which was pretty logically consistent, pretty easy to follow, and however, they just couldn't seem to, I suppose, accept the TI that I was using. They rejected it completely.
It's their evil, right? To them, TI is evil because it says, I reject the unique particularism of each individual's own feelings and say, I will replace those with a system that doesn't consider people's feelings at all.
Interesting. Yeah, because I mean, I suppose it means that you have to adjust yourself when you're discussing different types about different things. But how do you maintain your purity and make sure that you're using, for example, let's say the other day we're talking about TI and NE is pretty good for policy, coming up with ideas and how to really break down complex situations and think about all the possible outcomes and which one is the best form of policy to go forward with. And people with TE, etc., will be good at actually implementing this into like a written legislation and finding out ways to, I suppose, make it a reality. So how do we maintain pure in an objective, but at the same time accepting other types with different tool functions, leading functions, etc., and their insecurity functions, or even worse, the eighth function that is completely polar to your dominant function. So for example, the INFP, while you're trying to explain something with TI, because what I've realized is this: if I'm speaking to an INFP person, I have to use FI first in order to get them engaged with the conversation, then explain with the TI. So they won't, they will not be able to accept the conversation firstly with TI. You have to kind of make them, what do you call it? You have to make them feel like you care about what they're saying. Then they will listen to your TI.
Well, I mean, I think the solution to engaging with people who have conflicting function values is to do this, to say, okay, look, hey, we're currently, you and I are currently butting heads a little bit. We are currently demonstrating the following cognitive, the following attentional bias. So, and here's what that means. The reason you think this is because blah 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 blah. When you use this kind of thinking in order to provide your analysis of somebody else to them, people almost uniformly would like to do that. They'd like to hear you explain them to themselves. And so it makes it also renders the argument an example of a larger framework rather than the point itself. So, okay, now we're no longer arguing about whether your feelings ought to count in this discussion of public policy. Now, instead, we're not even arguing, we're just simply discussing how it is that you come to believe that way or manifest that way, whereas I manifest this conflicting way, and what that means. Because then you're saying, here's a TI reason for you to personally value this.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. And but I've also realized that with FI dominant users, either as a tool function or as a leading function, they often feel like we're too cold in the sense that we're always using TI in a too objective manner that doesn't consider people. Even though I suppose when I hear that, it sounds a bit like a contradiction, because I'm thinking, well, TI is the most objective way to get the most objective truth, but they feel as if we neglect the fact that we negate the FI in our debates or discussions. It makes them feel like, I suppose, not good, and so then able to actually listen to us. And
it's a conflict between authenticity and fairness. So they understand on some level that TI is more fair, but they prioritize authenticity. Look, TI says you have to stay in a box. Remember you talking about the box thing yesterday? Like TI goes, you're in a box. And FI goes, no, I'm a special snowflake. And no one else in the world is like me. Hi. Hold on. Let me talk to a new person here. New person, welcome.
Oh, thank you.
Do you have a name you'd like to be called?
Yeah, Sarah. Sarah is my name.
Sarah. Okay, great. I've not encountered or met you before. Did you come to just observe, or do you have any questions or thoughts or comments you'd like to chime in on?
No, I just want to listen first before I even, put a question in. So I'm just listening. Okay. And this sounds interesting because Jonathan talked to me about it. So it's quite an interesting topic, and I'm very interested in learning.
Do you self-identify as a particular type right now?
I'm apparently, I'm going to have to go back to my information because I saved it somewhere. But they say I'm a logistic kind of person.
Logistician or something?
Yes.
ISTP maybe?
I'm going to have to go back and check. I didn't save the data with me right now. But when I...
okay. I think, logistician will be ISTP.
Okay, wait. Okay, keep talking. I'll look for the information and get back to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Remember, you got the questionnaire right when the result comes INFJ. INFJ is the right answer.
He's joking. There's no right answer. There's no wrong answer.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Let me look here and see if there's any chat stuff in the chat stream. Yes, there is. And let's see what it says. Speak faster, oh my God. 1.5 speed, Eric. I wonder what would be an all extroverted individual. More Adderall, Eric. At least NISE to be an animal. Thanks, Eric. Too slow. I bail. What INFP insecurity like? TI? Yes. How would that even work? Well, like I said, I have a plan. I am beyond plan. If it doesn't own me, go do a random thing not in the plan. Why is Eric Thor's TE so good then? Well, I'm not absolutely certain it is. He does a more effective job of understanding what his channel is and manifesting that than I have historically. But that's consistent with NI, not with TE.
Well,
Okay.
I think in terms of like TE for INFJs, they use it, and when they use it, they find it very difficult to stray away from the method of using it, right? Or what would you say?
Well,
Since we're the INFJ here.
INFJs don't really use TE. They use a combination of NI and seeking SE to emulate TE. In other words,
Oh,
if
okay.
you know the best path right away, then you
This,
don't need to figure out. You don't need to do that thing I was saying about TE. Stop, Eric. Let me blah blah blah. If you already know the best path, you don't need to do that. So
that's interesting.
what Eric Thor's channel does successfully is execute a vision of a singular channel. Right? It is definitely a MBTI channel. It's Neo Jungian Institute. It's all consistent within itself. It's a singular vision. What talking with famous people is an exercise in NE. Now it's pretty singular because my TE's gotten better since I've been with Kimberly. In other words, it's been prioritized more since I've gotten with Kimberly.
So is this yeah? Is this why so one of my INFJ friends, when we're walking, she likes to follow the exact same route each time. So when I just walk, I cross the road when I see an opening, and I go whichever way there's an opening. But for her, it seems like she has to follow the same route. In fact, to the point whereby she forced me to follow her route, as opposed for me going through my random and slightly different route each time. That's interesting.
Yeah, and the thing is, both INFJ and ISFJ have polar TE, and they both manage that differently. So ISFJ manages it by doing what's in front of them all the time. Like Kimberly just walking around doing random shit right now. She has no plan, right? She's not saying I'm gonna do my stuff today according to this plan. She just does what's in front of her.
Oh.
It's called piddling, she says. Yes, well, that's how ISFJ does stuff. That's how they get to S. That they use their ignoring SE to replace TE, basically.
Yeah.
And they have as they know automatically what's good for their comfort and good for their ontological consistency as SI users. So when they do what's right in front of them, they're always doing something that they don't need to evaluate. Yes, I'm going to throw this away. I don't need to think about it. I just got to throw it away. Yeah, I'm going to do the laundry. I don't need to evaluate whether it's a good idea or not. I'm going to do the laundry.
Well, that's the thing. I'll still say INTPs are more logical than us because before they present an idea, they've thought at least about it to an 80% accuracy level, while ENTPs kind of perfect their ideas as they speak. So it's more volume rather than it's more volume. So it's like you're improvising as you speak in such a first level that you end up perfecting the idea through time. So, for example, when an ENTP like Eric argues with someone who is not an ENTP, basically, they would be able to present an idea that's quite good in the beginning. However, when they're presented with new and changing topics of that idea, they're able to evolve accordingly. While Eric is, when he's challenged, he's presented, let's say someone has told Eric, the idea you're presenting isn't quite 100% accurate, and this is why. And an ENTP like Eric would then be able to say, okay, fair enough, adjust his theory, make it still work logically through the process of NE. Meanwhile, somebody else would be, if they were challenged of the idea, they'll be able to quite come back and give you a rebuttal straight away because they have to think about it much more and much more consciously. And that's why it's very difficult to argue with ENTPs or have some kind of formulated logical discussion. INTPs are pretty good, but they're a little bit slower. And
ISTPs are exactly what you're saying. They have everything they're going to say prepared before they start talking to you. And when they run out of shit to say, or if you throw anything new at them, new at them, They go, okay, I'll consider that, and don't pursue the issue anymore.
No, they don't. Yeah.
Because they have to have it all thought out before they come in and do it, whatever it is they're going to do. And they have a purpose for having that conversation. It's not purposeless, but it may not be goal-oriented in the way that TE is. It's just they have to frame their TI through taking action. And their TI is there to tell them what's decided so they can take action on ISTPs. Now, ESTPs have a rubber because they take action and then their TI goes, why did I do that?
Okay.
Why was that the decided course? It must have been the decided course since I did it. Why was it the decided course? And that's why TI in the hands of an ESTP is mostly a excuse making or justification function.
Interesting. What about ESFJ? How does that process come along? You know, argumentation and
ESFJ is like an INTP mirror. In other words, whereas INTP wants to make sure that they successfully relate objects against other objects, that's what TI is, comparing objects against other objects. FE DOMs want to compare objects or data flow against a universal norm. So the absolute relativism of TI means it rejects any universal norms, really. It just establishes statuses of things for the purpose of certain kinds of nodes. But FE says, no, the universal norm is actually a universal norm and needs to be prioritized. And that universal norm is basically people want to be liked and they want to be respected. And it's not like TE where you need to know particularly the details of it to know what efficiency is. Efficiency in FE is always the same, being liked and respected and thought highly of rather than thought lowly of. So TI doesn't like that because it says, no, you are forcing an absolutism onto things that disallows the absolutism that I can attain through relative comparison with TI by excluding everything that's not an object. And FE goes, well, I'm excluding most things that are not objects, but I'm including the data flow. That is to say, your facial expressions, your body language, shit like that. And because I'm using a data flow rather than just objects, I have to compare it against a norm. I can't compare it against other objects because it's fluid. So as a consequence, FE is objective in that fashion, rather than TI's objectivity, which it wants to maintain the integrity of a relative absolute comparison system.
So is this why, let's say an FE DOM, let's say like an ESFJ, once you criticize their TI or another function that isn't quite well developed, they get quite, I suppose quite angry or emotional about it because
ESFJ doesn't get upset about TI stuff really because they're TI seeking. Now, the thing is, of course, TI and FE have a complicated relationship because if you're TI seeking and I provide you TI with the tone you like as an FE DOM, you're great with it. And if you don't like my tone, you're not happy with it because ultimately you prioritize the universal norm over the consistency. And you will often say to me, if you were an ESFJ, I'm not talking about what you said. I'm talking about how you said it, Eric. I got that all the time from my ex-wife. I got it all the time.
Yeah, of course. So doesn't that mean that someone who's very F DOM and someone who's very T DOM, or they kind of have to both cool down when it comes to in a relationship? Because if someone is too FE and they care about how you present yourself to the other person, and the other person is too TI DOM, they're just caring about the truth of the matter. You have to both kind of cool down and reach some kind of resonance form.
You should get together. That's what you should do. If you're an ESFJ and you're an INTP, you should be together as a pair. Duals do that for each other.
Okay.
So the Kimberly and my NE and SI don't conflict. They serve each other. So I need more SI provided for me so my NE can kick more ass. She needs more NE provided for her so her SI can kick more ass. And we do that for each other without trying and without doing anything. It just naturally occurs. The thing is, when you're having a conversation with somebody you're not with, like a stranger, and depending on how old you are, you may or may not be attuned yet to your own seeking. So when I was younger, I would reject SI entirely. fuck that noise. I shouldn't have to eat. I shouldn't have to drink. I shouldn't have to sleep. I think those things are an imposition upon me and I do not like them. Now I realize I do have to sleep, eat, and drink. And the reason why I'm not totally crazy right now, like I normally would be after 4 days on cycle and, a total of like 6 hours sleep the last 4 nights or something, is because Kimberly has made sure that my SI is attended to. I have eaten well. I've remained hydrated. I have taken baths and brushed my teeth and stuff. And even though I still can't quite really sleep, I lie down and try to sleep for a while. And last night I got a good 6 hours, and those things make a huge difference. Even though I have still sleep deprivation, I am not nearly the asshole I would have been prior to Kimberly after the same amount of time of sleep deprivation.
Okay, so you're saying basically if someone's top slot is let's say someone's top slot is TI and someone's bottom slot is let's say FE or vice versa, if they're talking with, to each other in a good tone and with respect, it's actually well complementary. And it's only and if someone's top slot is TI but their 8th slot is FI or whatever, then that's when there's an issue because you have a distrusting function, shadow function, being completely opposite to a very leading normal function.
Right. I mean, the thing to note is that for us as ENTPs, if we get told, I don't like your tone, we get fighty about it because your tone focus is interfering with my meaning focus.
Yeah.
With INTPs, if they get told, I don't like your tone, they go, oh, well, how should I do it then? And the FE Dom goes, oh, well, you should do it like this. Really? Can you do it for me? Says the TI Dom. And the FE Dom goes, sure, I would love to present your stuff to the people.
Okay. Yeah.
So, guys, am I STJT? What the heck does that even mean?
ISTJ?
Yeah, ISTJT.
It means you're an SI Dom with extroverted thinking as your second function. What that means, as an SI Dom, it means that first of all, you have a subjective personal epistemology. That means the way that you know things is that you've learned them and or experienced them.
Right.
The other way to know things,
learn, isn't it?
Well, other types who use NI, they believe knowledge is objective in the world. In other words, they believe they know it because they intuited how the system works. They didn't have to learn anything about it. They intuited how the system works, and therefore the knowledge they have is objective to the world. As SI users, you and me both are SI users, not NI users, we see knowledge as subjective. So we're likely to see truth as created, whereas an NI user is likely to see truth as discovered. Okay?
Right.
As your second function, TE, if your SI is paired with TE, that means you take your what you
TJ,
know.
No, TJ, not TE. TJ.
I know, but ISTJ means your function stack goes SI, introverted sensing, TE, extroverted thinking, FI, introverted feeling, and then NE, extroverted intuition. That's your 4 conscious functions. So what I'm saying is you basically are an SITE. That is to say, you start with a subjective epistemology, how you know what you know already, what makes you feel comfortable, what makes things effective for you. And then second, you express that through an efficiency model where you go, here's my goal. How can I more efficiently attain my goal? How can I structure my stuff so I'm not annoyed by it? Like, for example, my friend Cameron, he's an ISTJ. He has what he takes with him. He's got a little cooler about this big, and in it he's got a bong that fits right in the middle. He's got a little space that snaps right into place. He's got little loops all around the side of this little cooler for all the tools, and he uses it all. He never changes it, right? This works perfectly for him. He's got it set up now. When he arrives, he pulls his bong out. He's got a little bottle of water in there to put in the bong. He's got his poker. He's got his weed, and it's all neat and tidy and perfect. And that for him is very satisfying because that's an expression of SITE. How can I make my own shit in my own life more efficient and less of a hassle, so I don't ever trip over anything, so I don't ever have to duck when I go around here. I got to fix things so it's effective for me.
Okay. Oh, interesting. Because I thought that's the way people want to do things. I mean,
no, it's just you.
Gotcha. No, but I really was so convinced that people really aim towards that.
No, just you, because you're introverted sensing, so it's focused on yourself and your knowledge.
Okay.
All other ISTJs agree with you, though.
Okay. So who's who here?
Okay, well, I'm an ENTP, and so you and I should get along well. ENTPs normally get along well with ISTJs because you are NE seeking, which means it makes you happy when someone else provides you a lot of new ideas that you can then explore at your own pace. Okay.
Okay, that's very true. That's very true. That's exactly me. Tell me something.
And I'm an NE Dom, so I provide the novelty. Now, as an SI person, you to me feel just intuitively, I just sort of get that you're more grounded than I am, that you're more in tune with your epistemological function than I am. So if we were friends and hanging out, I would look to you to be like, I'd be like, Sarah, I can't figure this out. And then you'd come and you'd say, no, you unscrew this and you put this here, and you know. My friend Cameron would come over and I'd be like, Cameron, this fucking thing comes loose from the door all the time. It's annoying the fuck out of me. And he'd go, yes, okay, I'll go get my drill. Hold on. And then he'd show me how to fix it or just fix it for me.
Yeah.
As an FI third slot person, you like to show your appreciation for people, love or affection for people by doing little shit like that for them.
Okay. Right.
Whereas I like to show my love and appreciation by telling people fancy words about how valuable they are to me as a semblance, as a sort of rough approximation of actual FI.
Okay.
So, for example, it might take you a little bit of time to learn something, but once you've learned it, you remember how to do it, and that becomes like a systematized way of doing things.
That's exactly who I am. Actually, I take time to learn things. It takes me time to learn things, but when I learn it, I get hold of it.
Yeah. Well,
that's what a dyslexic person is, isn't it? You take time to learn something, but when you learn it, it's there. That's what dyslexic people do, isn't it?
Okay, well, it might correlate with dyslexia. I don't know, but I don't think ISTJ does. Regardless, the point is, it is true that some persons, such as ISTJs in particular, and ESTJs, they learn methodically, and once they've got it, it never goes away. ENTPs like me, we learn haphazardly, and we don't retain it, but it pops up when we need it.
Yeah.
Right. I see. So this whole lot of this personality way of learning, people, can you correlate that to let's say Leos, Scorpios? Is there any correlation?
Well, I don't know astrology. I don't believe in astrology. And I think that the reason why astrology is not very useful is because if you look at a complete star chart on somebody, basically you have in that complete chart a description of every single human being on the planet and every possible manifestation of being human. And then what people do is they go, okay, well, obviously my moon rising in whatever is most important because that aspect looks just like me. So it's basically, here's a bunch of possible descriptions of the way people behave. Pick and choose the ones you like. And then line it up with the star charts accordingly, and there you go. That's not a meaningful way to taxonomy anything. But so I don't know the answer to that question. I'm sure there probably is some sort of comparison to be made, but I wouldn't call it an actual correlation, and certainly it's not causal.
Right. I see.
So in a sense, with cognitive functions, it's more neuroscience. Is a lot more, I don't know how to explain.
I wouldn't call it neuroscience. I'd call cognitive functions an example of the king of all reasoning, namely philosophy. People like to prioritize scientific method or scientific approaches, supposedly, as being somehow more legitimate than philosophical approaches. However, they are fundamentally less legitimate, and science is the servant of philosophy. Like I told Kaizo yesterday, all good ideas are known before they're tested or proved.
That's true.
It is the knowing of the ideas, the coming up with them, the creation of the ideas, and the intuiting of them that matters. Everything else is just boring node work.
Right. So, I mean, I see they gave me with my personality trait to be a logistician, but I never thought, I mean, can you correlate this again with one's career? I mean,
well, okay, a better description of it would be mechanic or craftsman. So whatever your craft is, you'll get ever increasingly good at it as your TE optimizes. However, you are a jack of one trades. You're best served by having a single thing that you focus on, and learning it in huge depth and complexity in a way that allows you to become the single master of that one thing you do. Whereas
Right.
in contrast, and ISTP similarly benefits from narrow focus like that. In contrast, ENTP, it's torture to stay executing the same thing over and over again, trying to get it a little bit cleaner, a little bit cleaner, a little bit cleaner. That's comfortable for you, it's torture for me, and vice versa.
Right, I see.
Yeah.
So
So
that means I'm good for doctorate studies then, because then you focus on one thing and just focus on it forever.
It depends what you're getting your doctorate in. What are you getting your doctorate in? Huh?
Rheology?
Say again?
Have you had rheology?
I don't know what that is. Rheology?
Yeah, I don't know if you it's basically deformation and flow of materials. So you see how applied force would affect its flowing ability, its memory, its application to different, let's say, coil coating. How does that affect the quality of the applied fluid on the surface? It's quite a big,
so engineering basically.
pretty much, yeah, actually, yeah, process engineering.
That sounds like absolute fucking torture to me. But you'll be quite good at it. You've chosen a good course for sure. That's good for an ISTJ. To me, it sounds miserable.
Right, I see.
I don't like it when you have to actually do things to physical objects to make shit happen. I want to just say, well, let's pretend it was like this. Now let's do a real work by talking more.
Okay.
yeah, and I will be an ENTP as well. So I yeah.
So what are you doing? Why are you studying a doctorate yet this is torture for you?
Well, that's the thing. I've suited the environment. If you notice as well, like my supervisor allows me to do what I need to do to get things done. So for me, I've systematized it in a way that allows me freedom. So yeah.
Okay.
And when I do stuff, I do not do it systematic. I do stuff first, get loads of good experiments, and then I pretend I wrote all the things out and I did it systematic. So I do like reverse engineering. I don't do straight engineering. I do reverse engineering.
Interesting. I never heard of that, but okay.
The other thing that ENTPs do is we produce in bursts, and then we get slothy in bursts. Whereas ISTJ is steady. Slow and steady wins the race for ISTJ. They're not interested in rushing or hurrying through things because TE is about not doing that. It's about don't rush, don't use the wrong tool, don't fuck this thing up. Do it right and do it once. Do it effectively.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I'll go out there. For some weeks, I just won't do much work. But when it comes to when I need to, I'll just spend 1 week and do like 3 months worth of writing in that 1 week. But for the next 3 months, I'll be pretending I'm doing work.
Oh, that's what you do. Is that what it is? I got you now. Because I see you at the library, at the campus all the time, and I'm thinking you're doing a lot of work, but it turns out you're not.
No, you just have to appear like you're doing work. But I'm thinking, that's the thing, I'm doing work in my mind. I'm just not doing physical, real working work. And when it comes to experiments, for example, for you, you'd be designing something, then you go follow the list, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, I always follow the list, always.
Right, for me, it's the opposite. I would go just design a very simple experiment and then I would go do the experiment, then I'll write the list as I do the experiment.
Right, okay, I see.
So if I meet something I didn't expect, I'll be able to then combat it and fix that problem. If I just wrote the list, I would not be able to even follow it. It just wouldn't happen to me.
Yeah.
So
let me just intervene here and point out that
Sorry, no, go on.
One of the advantages of ENTP work is that while we aren't slow and steady, we do bursts. We can get a lot done in a burst. So I did this morning before I started the live stream. I copied and pasted this table, and I copied and pasted this table, and I copied and pasted this table. But the rest of it I generated this morning. So, and the thing is it's only because though I felt it. I was like, oh, I really want to do this. I'm on a mission. You know, sometimes you get like, I'm on a mission to get this thing out. And what motivated it? the argument I had with Taylor last night about whether he's an ESTP. And I was like, Taylor does not understand slot mechanics. And so I'm like, bust this shit out. But see, that's what ENTPs need. We need to be removed from considerations of practical matters to be motivated adequately to do something, be allowed to work in a burst, and then be allowed to play around as long as we want in between. Not much in life affords you that much flexibility, but some things like a YouTube channel does.
Okay. Right, gentlemen, I'm going to have to leave you right now, but thank you. That was very insightful.
Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you. We shall join next week.
Right on.
Okay.
Oh, wait, next
and
week.
I think I'm gonna take this opportunity then to end the live stream in general. It's been over an hour. I don't like to make them too long. So thank you all for watching. Thank you for being here, those of you who are here, and we'll see you next time on Talking with Vince.